So, as always, at this time, it's the press preview, a first look at what is on tomorrow's front pages. And we're going to check out those headlines tonight with the Daily Mirror columnist, Susie Boniface, and the political commentator, Benedict Spence. They'll be with us from now until just before midnight. Evening to both of you. We'll chat to you in a moment after we've had a look at some of those front pages. Well, let's start with the Telegraph, leading with the Legionella scare on the Bibi Stockholm, and warns that the vessel may be uninhabitable for weeks. Deadly bug on barge is the headline on the front of the Mirror. And it's the same story on the front of the Guardian, reporting that Home Secretary Suella Braverman is under pressure to abandon the barge accommodation plan altogether. The Doctors' Union has been accused of trying to bring down the government for masterminding rolling strikes, not rolling skates. That story on the front of the Daily Express, you can see it there. The Eye newspaper reveals a major security breach at the UK Foreign Office that allowed Chinese and Russian hackers to access emails and private messages. The Daily Mail reports on pressure on the Health Secretary to scrap NHS guidance that allows patients who temporarily identify as female to share female-only wards. Here's your FT for tomorrow, leading with a push by Saudi Arabia to join the UK, Italy and Japan in a next-generation fighter jet project. While the Times reports students face a battle for housing, with universities refusing to guarantee accommodation or offering them rooms in different cities. And finally, a rise of the sarnie psychos. The Daily Star reports on people tucking into cold baked beans and other unholy sarnie combos. And don't forget, you can scan the QR code at any time during the programme. You'll see it on screen. Check out the front pages of tomorrow's papers while you watch us discussing them. And to do that tonight, Susie Boniface and Benedict Spence are both here. A very good evening to both of you this Friday night. So, one story dominating the front pages, really, Susie, and that is the latest twist in the story about the Bibi Stockholm. The Daily Telegraph reporting that migrants have been taken off the barge. They're all off now because of a Legionella scare.
Yeah, I should just say that I think there'd be other stories on the front page if junior doctors were roller skating. And that was probably one of the scenes that got cut from the Barbie movie, junior doctors joining Ken and Barbie on their rollerblades. What a pity. Silly season, didn't get that far. But no, as far as Legionella is concerned, so what's happened, back to the actual front pages, what's happened is that quite plainly, the Conservative Party, the government, had planned into their media grid for this week small boats, and we're going to look tough and hard and mean. It's all going to be great, and we're going to say we're doing one of Rishi Sunak's 5 pledges. In fact, the only one that anyone could remember what it is. And they managed to cock it up from beginning to end. So actually, what happened is 2 weeks ago they tested the pipes on the Stockholm for Legionella disease, which is one of those things that you have to do. It takes 2 weeks, takes 14 days for those tests to come through. 14 days on the button on Monday, the contractors were told there does seem to be Legionella disease on the boat. You can't use it. It then turns out it was Wednesday until the council in Portland told the Home Office. But then it was Thursday, they moved another 6 migrants on board because the message doesn't seem to have got through. And Thursday evening before ministers were told. And then it's not Friday until they've actually been taken off. Now, what we don't know is at what point the migrants who were on there were told, guys, don't drink the water, because they should have clearly been told on Monday not to do that. Why it took so long to get to the ministers, and also why on earth they put migrants on this barge when the checks hadn't been completed. Because I'll bet you my house, the reason that they went on there on Monday was because it was a small boats week, and they wanted, after lots of delays to this barge policy, they wanted to say they were getting it done, and they just cut corners and said, stuff it, get them on, the tests will be fine. And look where we ended up. And now it's another 2, 3, 4 weeks to flush the pipes, clean it all out again, and do more tests to make sure that it's clear. Meanwhile, where are the migrants? Back in hotels.
Yes, and of course, another huge day of crossings yesterday. More than 700 people making the most of calm seas and better weather, Benedict. Front of the Mirror, I mean, they're calling it migrant chaos. Deadly bug on barge is their headline. I mean, it does all sound rather incompetent, doesn't it?
I think, well, I mean, what else do we come to expect from government at any level these days in this country other than people cutting corners, people not calling each other on the days that they're meant to and tell them, oh, by the way, there could be an outbreak of a deadly bacteria. But who's to say? So it's only 40-odd people. I think the first thing I do want to say is that from none of the front pages of any of the papers have we been able to glean what concentration of Legionella is on the BB Stockholm barge. So we don't actually know if they have been moved as a minor precaution because it's just a trace amount, or if it is over 10 CFU per milliliters, in which case people have been drinking the water and they might well be hospitalized. And of course, part of the problem is it takes another 2 weeks for the symptoms to potentially emerge. So there's going to be, I think, a lot of question marks for the next sort of fortnight as to whether or not it's a big outbreak or whether or not it's a not great, but just a reasonably safe trace outbreak. But I think Susie is actually right. And it's come, as you say, at the start of the 3-month period where in 2022, 51% of the migrants who came to the UK across the Channel came in this 3-month period. And of course, the government wants to be seen to be getting tough on this. It has to. The Prime Minister's gone on holiday. It needs to be seen to actually have a handle on things. And what we had was, I think, almost, if not quite, the record number for a single day earlier this week crossing, combined today with people having to be taken off the barge, given that we only had a handful go onto the barge in the first place. And it all comes back to the fact that earlier this week, we crossed the 100,000 threshold since this started in 2018. That's a long time that the government has had, actually, to find a more permanent solution than a floating vessel to put people on whilst they're getting processed. And I think it's entirely justified for people of all persuasions, whether or not they think that these people should all be let in en masse, whether they think they should all be deported, or whether they are somewhere in the middle. I think it is perfectly reasonable for everybody to say, well, that's 5 years now, 5 years that there has been for the government to come up with a plan. And this big sort of, flagship policy of barges has had to be scaled back because it might be potentially dangerous to put people on the barges, and still no planes are going to Rwanda. People aren't being deported back to their home countries, but they also don't have permanent accommodation. We can't process them fast enough. And I think that, as you say, it sounds a little bit shambolic, frankly.
OK, Susie, we'll have a quick look at the front of The Guardian as well. Asylum barge evacuated. I mean, do you think, there has been a suggestion that they may never get back on board this boat, and it really is the end of it in terms of the BB Stockholm being a solution. Do you feel that is a possibility?
Well, look, the BB Stockholm was never a solution because it could never take 172,000 asylum seekers. And our immigration problem, if you think we have a problem, is not the fact that we have 172,000 asylum seekers. If you are a dyed-in-the-wool racist who thinks there are too many migrants, then what we have who are seeking asylum, the people who are going onto the barge and the people who are seeking asylum are the vast majority of them, despite the fact the Home Office don't like putting the numbers out. We think the vast majority are asylum seekers. They have a genuine right to be here, and they do get approved in the end. And all that the barge was a ploy. It was an image, a symbol, something that the government could wave to say, look how cruel we are to people. This is going to work. And it was never going to deal with the fundamental issues of the small boat crossings or immigration. It was only ever a PR exercise, and it's been handled incredibly badly by people who can't even manage a PR exercise. So the chances of them actually being able to fix the fundamental problem of immigration, much of which is caused by climate change and so on, is utterly beyond them.
OK, all right, well, we'll discuss this more after 11 o'clock, but I just want to move on to the front of the Daily Express. Benedict, doctors striking again, and there's a real stalemate here, isn't there?
I mean, I find the way that the Express has framed this, doctors are striking to bring down the Tories, is particularly interesting. I mean, presumably, if you are a member of a profession and you think that the government of the day is not fulfilling its role towards you, it's not an awful thing to want to see that government change if it's not actually going to change its policies. And I think actually that throughout this this very sorry episode, we've seen that the government is, dragging its heels, frankly, on something that it knows has to be addressed. Everybody who works in the NHS knows something has to change. It can't carry on in its permanent state. So to simply frame it like that and say, oh, the doctors are trying to bring down the Tories, you're going to go, well, yeah, them and about 1,000 other professions as things are currently working out. It is it is a bit of a gridlock, a bit of a deadlock at the moment, but ultimately the public will not put up with it. And we're coming towards an election now in the next sort of 12 to 18 months, and people will look at the Tories' record over the last few years and say, do I feel richer? Do I feel poorer? Are the queues at the hospital longer? Are they shorter? All of these sorts of things. And the Tories fail on pretty much every metric. So I don't think it's the doctors that are fighting to bring down the Tories. I think the Tories are doing a perfect job of that themselves.
Susie?
I think Benedict's doing a marvellous job of being a liberal lefty commentator. I don't need to say anything at all anymore because he's done.
No, I'm just despondent.
Susie, what are your thoughts on the latest round of strikes? Junior doctors being offered 6% pay rise, of course, plus a payment. The government saying that is their best and final offer. Doctors still calling for the equivalent of 35%.
Well, it needs to be somewhere there's a negotiation and you meet somewhere in the middle. The fact is there isn't much negotiating happening. I think if they live stream those negotiations, all sides might behave a little bit better when they're in the room and might do a little bit more hard work rather than posture when they're outside the room. But, the Express front page is a bit mad. Not every doctor's striking. Not every doctor is a Labour lunatic, and not every doctor is a Tory twit either. There's people are allowed to have political views, and some of them are striking because they want to fix the problem in the NHS and they want to demonstrate how bad it is. And others are not striking because they feel that they can't. It's a personal decision for everyone involved. And as Benedict says, everyone who takes strike action, is technically trying to bring down the government, I suppose, if they're asking for a public sector pay rise. But also, they're just trying to get their message across. People strike sometimes in private companies as well. They're not trying to bring the boss of the company to their knees. They're just trying to be heard. OK, Labour lunatics and Tory twits. I love it. All right, stay where you are. We will chat again in a minute. Coming up after the break on the press preview, we'll be looking at a story on the front of the FT as King Charles may get a 45% pay rise, stirring anger amongst Republicans. Don't go away. Welcome back. Part two of the press preview. Benedict and Susie still with us. Benedict, front page of the Eye. There's been a lot about cyber hacking and data leaks in recent days. The most serious, of course, in Northern Ireland. But this is an interesting exclusive by the Eye. A Foreign Office employee downloaded one of those pesky emails with malware in them, probably accidentally, according to the Eye. But it opened the door to the top Whitehall network and able to access emails and private messages.
Yes, a major security breach. And, one suspects we're going to be hearing a lot more of these sorts of things as, the world becomes increasingly multipolar and we embrace the fact that we're sort of in a new Cold War against certain powers, China and Russia being amongst them. There was, of course, the story a couple of weeks ago about the security cameras outside MI6 being Chinese run and accessible from Beijing. So there will be lots of these sorts of things. But I think it's the first thing is to recognize that this was, security sources say, probably unintentional. So that's it's not brilliant for security protocol, but we haven't been sort of infiltrated or anything like that. The second thing I think to say is these stories, you'll only ever hear the negative stories. You'll never, ever hear the stories about how we've managed to hack the Chinese or the Russians, which I guarantee you we do, because I know we like to think of them all as masterminds, but they too will have people who will very sillily click on links in emails and things like that. So we need to take this in proportion, is that, we are doing to them exactly what they're doing to us. But the third thing that I would say is, as we are so dependent, especially on China and Chinese technology, there are always going to be windows through which China especially is going to be able to get access to certain things in the UK. Now, if it's the electoral register, that's not the end of the world. But as you referenced there, the PSNI, or access to the Foreign Office or whatever it is, sometimes they might actually come across something that functions properly. I don't know what that might be, but they might, and that is slightly concerning.
Susie, a quick thought on this?
I think if they did find anything that would function properly, it would be great if they could flag it up to us and we'd know what it was.
They let us know.
I think possibly that Benedict's positive view that the good thing about this is that it was done accidentally, it was just a blunder, is perhaps a little bit optimistic. Rather than malign intent, we just let the hackers in because why not? What's the point in having firewalls these days? Just download stuff off the internet. No one will mind. It's okay," said James Bond. Terrible idea. Some of this stuff, it does include correspondence from our diplomats abroad, although it might not be classified. It is still important. It is still things that feed into government policy, and there can still be things, as some of the WikiLeaks have shown, things that our diplomats say abroad, which can be a bit embarrassing if they get published. And I'm fairly sure that someone's probably going through them right now.
Yeah. OK, we've just got about 30 seconds left, Benedict, to look at this story on the front page of the FT. The King's looming 45% pay rise stirs Republican anger. Now, this is all about the income that he gets from Crown ownership of the seabed and offshore wind projects. Now, I thought he said that he was going to give profits back to the public good from those wind farms. What's this story about?
Well, it remains to be seen whether or not he will do that. But who would have thought that, investing in the seabed would have turned out so well for the royal family? Who would have thought that being such a large landowner would pay such dividends? 45%, it's staggering, really. And you consider how much it is that we are investing in renewables, especially in wind. And we all thought that offshore would be a lot cheaper. And it turns out that somebody's making an absolute fortune from it. And who does it happen to be? The man that doesn't actually need any more money. But we wait to see what he will do with it. King Charles is a big charitable giver. He has lots of causes that he's very interested in. So let's wait and see. Maybe he will give it to good causes, or maybe he'll use it to renovate Buckingham Palace. Who knows what he'll do with it?
Yeah, OK. We probably need to read more of that story from inside the FT. Perhaps we'll get that in the next hour.